Yeah, I love antique and vintage jewellery, especially for engagement rings. I just think there's something so beautiful about each one being so unique. It really is a one of a kind. I think the earliest one I've got here is this Georgian one, and you can tell it's Georgian, it's closed back. There are some open back Georgian rings out there, but that's actually very rare. They usually are closed back. Diamonds were rare back then, and so this is a rather beautiful little rose cut diamonds set on silver on gold, and it's a lovely sort of old grey charm, which was lovely. So that's Georgian. With the Victorian eras, you can definitely tell with rings because they will be made from 15 or 18 karat gold. There will be no platinum, and I mean that, there will be no platinum. Platinum came in the 1900s, and so this is where you tend to see them usually just at the top. And then when the Art Deco era comes in the 1920s, there's a lot more solid platinum rings. With the Victorian era, it tends to be quite heavy on the gold. It was like showing off your wealth. The early Victorian is more pretty, and they also loved all these like details. You'll find claw settings. You will also have, this is another great example, you've got this beautiful shank with it. This is carved half hoop, and there's a beautiful little swirl details with old European cuts. This is about 1880. Again, they love that sort of claw setting. Sometimes they don't have the carved half hoop. This is a really charming, wonderful example of a Victorian ring. Again, about 1890s, but it's before Edwardian's period comes in. And you can see you've got that beautiful little claw settings, which are so delicate. You've got the old diamond charms and a beautiful sapphire that's been cut to look like a heart. If it was a modern cut sapphire, it would be much more, because we have laser today, so it would be lasered cut into a sapphire, and it would be absolute perfect, immaculate, in my views, very clinical heart. As for this, is a very charming, someone's really tried to cut it, and they've really thought about the design, and it just looks so charming on the finger. And that's a really lovely example of a Victorian piece of jewellery. Here's another example of the Victorian one, and you've got this lovely sort of details. When I talk about heavy gold, I mean exactly that. So they've got this lovely heavy feathered shanks and the details. It's all about details in the Victorian time. They've really thought about it, because you've got to remember these are all totally handmade. So there's a lot of love. Another Victorian ring is this one, which is so sweet. Victorians love symbolism, so this is great fun because this is a kiss ring. The same way we still sign our text messages with a kiss at the end. Well, this is the same thing. It means, kiss, I love you. When we go into my favourite era, the Edwardians, or as my granny would say, Edwardians. The reason being, it's so pretty, it's so light, it's so delicate, it's a lot of like floating effects. There's lots of pearls, there's diamonds, there's some colours, and they're just so wearable, such perfect engagement rings. And then you've got that old diamond charm, so they're just overall just absolutely perfect. They tend to be low on the finger, they're comfortable to wear, they can slip on and off, and they're really, really beautiful. This is a lovely example of a Edwardian ring. You've got that low setting, a lovely sapphire in the middle, and on the sides little diamonds which almost look like chips. None of them are the same size, and that's what gives it that absolute charm. But the point is, it fits on the finger. It's so low and flat, and that is a really fantastic example of Edwardian jewellery. The Edwardian times, you do get a bit of that Victorian-ish in. So when you think of the 5-stone diamonds, they just came up with a slightly different design. So in this case, this is a good example. So this is a really sweet, charming 5-stone diamond ring, but you've got that sort of lovely boat shape in the centre, and that's a tiny bit of platinum. And then you've got this lovely gold sort of setting on the side, which gives it a sort of almost a timeless modern setting. So here's another classic Edwardian. You've got the lovely gold and then that little hint of platinum where the diamonds are, and that's exactly what the Edwardians love. You wouldn't find an Edwardian 1900 100 fully platinum ring, more likely 1910 when they start really using it, because platinum was very, very expensive then. So this is a really lovely thing, all about that design. There's a prettiness, that floating effect, and also, more importantly, it's more stone than metal. Another classic is a 3-stone ring, and you can always tell the age by the stones. So we've got some here, you know, you've got some lovely old cut charms, and then on the side you've got this sort of lovely, they're claw settings, but more to the point, it's low and not high. So when you put them on, in compared to a modern one, they're really nice and flat and comfortable. It's all about being more diamonds or more gemstones than metal. Another typical one, you've got that tiny bit of platinum at the top, sort of giving the illusion it's got more diamonds with a lovely cluster, and then it's all 18 karat gold. Another giveaway is always a band. They would never be very thick at the back. Bezel settings will be coming in. So here's another example is here. They love that sort of bezel settings. It's much more secure in the diamond. It's still old cuts, and then it's still giving you that little twinkle. In great effect. Still low, still flat, still pretty and dainty and lovely. Same as this, comfortable to wear. You've got 2 charming old cut diamonds, and you've got a lovely emerald in the middle. This is a fantastic example of about 1910 as well. You've got that lovely, amazing floating effect. In the centre we have a ruby, which has been verified to be no heat natural ruby from Burma. So the very, very best rubies you can get. And here's another example. You know, it's very flat, it's very low, it's all about the design. We are now going into the 1920s. So 1920s is really fun. It's all about the fact that they can do these different cuts. They're now showing off. They are now at their height of design, you know, working out how they can set them up. They now are very much working in 18 karat white gold as well as platinum. They're also working in still 18 karat gold, but this is now getting fun, more unique. And like here's another one, the hexagon design, typical Art Deco, and the fact that the gallery on the side, you've got this beautiful swirl details, and still got the old cuts. This is a big hint. They still are not absolutely brilliant yet. They nearly are, but they're not. Some rings that go big, they still got that lovely, even for a big diamond, it might be raised, but it's all about the different cuts. So now we've got the baguettes that are being seen. You've got that lovely, like sort of like almost like teardrops design, pear shapes up the gallery. This is one of my favourite rings at the moment because it's such a wow factor at the front, but you've got this incredible design on the side, and it is just a fantastic piece. It's like the best of Art Deco. And I was talking about different cuts. Here we have, you know, you've got here different cuts on the side. The Art Decos love, you know, experimenting, and it's a great effect. The 1930s is very much still the 1920s, just a bit of the diamonds are very much heading towards the brilliance. But then we've got this amazing thing with the Second World War happened, where we start getting inspired by sort of tanks and things. So if you're thinking Cartier now, we're now really in the tank era. Fantastic example where you've got the lovely gold and very retro. So that's the word lots of people used in the 1940s, very retro. They loved cluster earrings and big brooches, but very floral. The design is sort of Art Deco, but much bolder. And this one is particularly interesting because it is engraved inside Heinz, like the baked beans, Heinz baked beans, 1943. So this is a real 1943 ring that someone would have worn. Heinz is a German name, but this ring is French, so I'd love to know their love story. The 40s and 50s are also still slightly Art Deco, but the diamonds are going a bit more modern. but you can really tell the difference when you start getting into the 60s. They got really good with those machines for cutting, and they got better and better until they could cut almost the perfect brilliant. And then in 1965, which is why we start talking about manufactured diamonds, and diamonds now becoming really perfect, it's because laser cut diamonds was first done in 1965, which is why when you've got to start thinking of the 60s merging almost to today, as sometimes can be really difficult to date, especially when they're in a sort of vintage inspired setting and there's no hallmarks, but you do get the odd clue. So it's got almost what looks like the Victorian shoulders. You've got a sort of very typical Art Deco design, but like everything, look at the back. Now these looped ring settings, the fact they're gold, and then you've got that sort of platinum, it's almost too perfect. Everything's just, and the way it's finished is just a little bit not as perfect as the Edwardian and Art Deco period. And therefore, that's why I would conclude, looking at this, there's no hallmarks, it doesn't say anything, it's tested as 18 karat gold and platinum, that and with hallmarks came in from the 1970s, you kind of know that this is a really good example of a 1960s ring. So 1960s, 1970s, but it's still a fabulous look, but it's not Art Deco and it's not Edwardian. So, you know, one shouldn't be trying to force a sale into telling you something you want to hear. Instead, this is a great look, it's beautifully made, and I think it's a real wow factor. And I don't think you can think 60s without, you know, turquoise. I always think of turquoise with the 60s. It's just such a fabulous, you know, it's about the cocktails. It was about, you know, you can kind of imagine just the hippie, free love. Yeah, this is a sort of typical sort of 60s ring. Again, you turn around, which you tend to see also in the 1950s. They love this sort of very sort of almost what in some rings you find them as being ballerina rings. I don't have a ballerina ring here, but this is a typical sort of the bottom what you would see, and that's very, very typical 1950s and 60s. This ring is 1960s. The diamonds are absolutely beautifully cut, very, very sort of perfectly round. But isn't that the most fantastic turquoise ring? This is a brilliant one, very, very sort of typical 70s. You know, it's looking very cool. 80s, you know, you've got to think of those big, chunky Rolexes of the 80s. And you kind of get, when you think of like that, you start realising the ideas, things are starting to get a bit cast and more manufactured. And so now you're going into the more heavy look. So this is a lovely ring, but do you see how the band is also very heavy and thick? And here's another example of where you've got a heavy, thick ring. In the case of this one, it is also, I mean, these two are hallmarks, so you are going to start finding rings that are hallmarked. But that's a lovely emerald cut diamond, and then you've got yellow sapphires. And I was talking about how designs copy at a later date. This is one that looks like an Edwardian. You've still got the old cut diamonds almost, and lovely it's called a triple cluster design, and it's giving all the illusions that it should be a Victorian Edwardian, but yet something's off. What's off? So you look closely and you'll see that it's all merged in the metalwork. This has been manufactured in a way, this has not been perfectly clawed. The look is still very much there. I love buying the sort of vintage inspired pieces, because if this was an Edwardian piece, an original, it would, you know, then these designs are really hard to find. And they do go for quite a lot of money. As for this was a very affordable way of getting the look for less, and still pretty fantastic, and it's still low. I love it when you get the sort of vintage inspired pieces. Again, this is hallmark, so we know it is not old either. I do think the 90s are very cool, and we've got a great example here. Look, you've got that fabulous chain effect. I don't think it's very unusual to find a ring with a chain. We bought this one privately, so I know all the story about this one, and it's really fascinating because this diamond was actually bought in Italy in the 1960s as flawless, and I did take it to get a certificate, and it turns out they were a bit mean on the grading. They said VVS1 to VVS2. The reason why they have to give 2 grades is because it's in a setting, so unless the stone's out, they can't give it a definite grading. But it's absolutely clear as crystal. You've got a beautiful, brilliant cut, and you've got a very, very 90s, very cool look. And then we go into the noughties. I do have one here, which I just think is fabulous. I mean, it is, you know, the diamond in the middle is a GIA diamond. It's absolutely fantastic. It's got a F colour diamond. It's very bright, brilliant diamonds. And this is a very classic noughties look. Very, very bling. This is now manufactured. Although today people are still naughty because they say it's been hand finished. And that basically means they just put the diamonds in and then closed the claws. But it's not handmade in the way that the earlier pieces, which is why I absolutely love the antiques and vintage, and I hope you find that helpful.